Hello and welcome. You're watching News Mongolian World. I'm your host, Andra Kamater. And for our top stories, AMCHAM Mongolia's April monthly meeting addresses private sector-led economic development. Deputy Prime Minister meets with executives from Engineers India Limited. State officials are discussing new waste incineration practices. And for the news, stay tuned. On Tuesday, AMCHAM Mongolia held its monthly meeting on the topic of promoting the private sector-led economic development of Mongolia. Panelists included Member of Parliament Darchat, economist Jargasacha, the Chief of the Economic and Commercial Section of the U.S. Embassy, and others.
American Chamber of Commerce in Mongolia today is organizing our April monthly meeting on a theme of promoting private sector-led economy and recovery. So the main purpose of today's consultation is really to provide insights on what government should do to reduce state-owned enterprises involvement in Mongolian economy, whether we are heading to the private sector-led economy or a state-owned led economy. So our emphasis is on to increase private sector-led economy, because that's what the key to the economic recovery and development. That's what we believe. And therefore we're promoting that economic recovery should really involve private sector companies and businesses and individuals, entrepreneurs who are doing their work and working on innovation and employing other people, bringing in new latest technology and equipment to the country. So that's the key, I believe. And right now the Mongolian economy is very dependent on state-owned enterprises. Even government is talking about setting the milk prices, daily product prices, and limiting the dollar reserves, and in-flight from Mongolia. So this shouldn't be the case. The government should really promote the economic circulation by supporting the private sector companies, not having too many inspections in one place, allowing them to operate, not requiring too many licenses and permits to operate, and inspections and so on. So reducing those red tape and bureaucracy and inflation, the corruption stuff, it will really help the local economy to be promoted and so on.
Opening the discussion, head of the Strategy Coordination Policy Agency Tsingel delivered a presentation on the government of Mongolia's new revival policy and the ratio of state-owned and private enterprises in the Mongolian economy. According to the agency's data, there are 106 state-owned enterprises active in Mongolia, of which 11% are profitable, while the remaining 87% are experiencing losses, have almost no economic impact, and need operational improvement. Almost all of the discussion's participants criticized the excessive state engagement in different business sectors and noted that state-owned businesses and companies are likely to engage in corruption and political influence.
Yeah, pandemic cost a lot. The government issued total 15 trillion tugriks to revive the economy. 15 trillion tugriks is almost the size of a budget. So certainly with this money coming into the pool of economy, it has a risk of having more inflation, which now we are facing. So this is a reality that we see this inflation on one side. On the other side, now with the situation eased, more the activities coming up, and yet we are facing now the devaluation of Mongolian tugriks and inflation, 15%, way more than Mongol Bank had estimated or expected. That's why Mongol Bank had changed its policy rate from 6.5 to 9%, which altogether which supposed to support private sector to be more active, to have more funds. So that's a bit the expectation that there will be more activity of the private sector. But today we, for example, this AMCHAM discussed about the ratio of private sector and state-owned enterprises. And that ratio also plays an important role because in such a country, developing country like Mongolia, when we have a lot of state-owned enterprises, we unfortunately face a lot of corruptions.
We like to say that 80% of the local economy consists of private businesses. But today almost 60% of the economy is occupied by state-owned enterprises. State-owned companies are now the biggest taxpayers. On the other hand, these state-owned companies have the most debt and unprofitable operations. The most relevant example is the case of Development Bank, a fully state-owned bank. As we can see, 3.2 trillion MNT's non-performing loans were issued to state-owned companies, and now the government is talking about repaying that debt through the 3.4 million people of Mongolia. The businesses with state involvement have corruption, conflicts of interest, and political influence. So my point is that these companies should be privatized or at least issue an IPO and become publicly owned companies.
This 60% is coming from the 40% of the budget income size in the economy, plus 18%, which is played by all state-owned enterprises. So altogether, the state role is becoming more than a half, almost 60%, which is on the contrary what we have been discussing before, where we were saying that the private sector is playing the key role in the economy. Now we have reversed the situation. So it depends on how much we will make the progress toward privatization of state-owned enterprises, in which form, for example. Looks like they will make a shareholding company where majority is to be public at least. Through this way, we implement more monitoring of performance of state-owned enterprises, and we expect the efficiency and productivity of those companies will be increased.
We appreciate that the government is willing to discuss and improve the economy and having the economic forum this week actually. But the main emphasis should be on private sector, not the state-owned enterprises, because we believe so many projects in terms of 6 main pillars of economic recovery policies really dependent on state-owned enterprises. And we really think that it should be the otherwise, the opposite, which is the private sector should be heavily involved. And as long as private sector is involved, more jobs will be created, more revenue will be generated, and therefore the livelihoods of people will be improved, rather than state is setting the price and limiting the economy.
The meeting's participants agreed that the private sector plays an important role in reviving local economies and creating jobs, while the state's excessive engagement in business should be reduced. The American Chamber of Commerce in Mongolia is an independent, membership-driven organization that seeks to build, strengthen, and protect business between the United States and Mongolia, and to actively promote Mongolia as a destination for American investment. It regularly holds monthly meetings and discussions that touch on emerging social, economic, and business issues with participants from the private and public sectors.
An appeal hearing for the case of former mayor of Ulaanbaatar City Batul was held on Monday. On December 16th of last year, the Chingulta District First Instance Criminal Court found 7 people, including former mayor Batul, guilty on charges of embezzlement.
The first instance court sentenced Batul to 4 years in prison in 2021. His son Choloda was fined 15 million Mongolian tugriks, and the former director of State Housing Corporation Gantolak was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The court granted Batul's request to attend the trial in person, and he was given a temporary release from the 409 detention unit. The former mayor is appealing charges of embezzlement and abuse of power. To protest the court's decision, he declared a hunger strike demanding the right to publish, speak, and express his views. His lawyer Puruf Dalam requested that the trial be open to the public. She claims that the prosecutor's office has falsely stated that Batul did not go on hunger strike and that his right to publish his opinions has not been restricted. On Monday, an appeals court decided to return the case to the prosecutor's office for further investigation and to release Batul on bail until a final decision on sentencing is made.
Around 3 million tons of garbage is produced in Mongolia each year, and only 30% of waste is recycled in urban areas. Waste management experts consider the use of a new incineration technology to be the best solution for the disposal of unrecycled waste, but it would require solid workforce training.
Waste recycling doesn't occur in rural areas due to a lack of standardized waste management practices. Waste is often stored above ground, and some garbage is landfilled without sanitation guidance. Litter is the main cause of pollution in the countryside. In urban residential areas, only 20 to 30% of all waste is recycled. Experts think incineration is a better solution for waste disposal, and the use of new technology is now being considered. During incineration, waste is burned at 1,200 degrees Celsius. Some waste can't be safely incinerated, including materials with radioactive elements or those containing certain chemicals, such as mercury.
The flame control technology is made in Italy. It's an automated system that controls the heat and airflow by itself. It doesn't require any manpower.
For waste that dissolves at high temperatures, only 5 to 10% of the material remains after incineration. Daily household waste can be fully incinerated. However, safety regulations and practices are the key to properly working with incineration technology. Officials say the priorities now are the training of a workforce, meticulous system monitoring, and building practical knowledge.
Now let's take a look at Mongolia's current affairs.
On March 31st, Deputy Prime Minister AMCHAM received executives from Exim Bank of India and Engineers India Limited, the consultation company in charge of providing management services for Mongolia's oil refinery construction project. The meeting was also attended by Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of India to Mongolia, MP Singh. During the meeting, Minister of Mining and Heavy Industry Yondan talked about his expectations for the historic project being implemented by the two countries to be completed on time. The refinery's construction work is currently on schedule. Deputy Prime Minister AMCHAM said that the government of Mongolia is paying special attention to the project. The sides agreed to further discuss the project's risks and costs in another meeting. While the population of Ulaanbaatar has tripled in less than 3 decades, its availability of water has remained the same, posing a significant threat to its residents. The U.S. government's Millennium Challenge Corporation (MCC) and the government of Mongolia are partnering through the MCC Mongolia Water Compact to combat this threat through infrastructure development and capacity building to ensure residents of Ulaanbaatar have a sustainable supply of water, putting them on the path toward healthier and more prosperous future. The $350 million water compact will increase the available water supply through infrastructure for the development of new well fields and capacity building. The compact's water supply project will support the construction of new groundwater wells and a state-of-the-art plant for purifying drinking water. The construction of a new plant for treating wastewater and the development and implementation of policy, legal, regulatory, and institutional reforms that enhance the long-term sustainability of Ulaanbaatar's water supply. Mongolia is among only a few countries in Asia to have a second compact. The first Mongolia compact, a $284 million investment, was implemented from 2008 to 2013.
Here's the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Here's the weather forecast of world's major cities. Well, that's all for now, and thank you for staying with us. We will see you next time with more news and updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.